Aaron Wood is a very fortunate young man. He's tall and he's blonde and he looks good. He does everything quite well.
Saving our rivers has taken precedence in my life.
I want to be this person who makes a difference.
Yes, I am amazed and proud to see what's happened to him.
Hello, I'm Stefano De Pieri. Tonight's Australian story is about a young man I once employed in my restaurant, but he is now tipped by both sides of politics to be one of Australia's next generation of leaders. At 28, Aaron Wood is facing the biggest challenge of them all, to save the environment. He is the organizer of a fantastic event, the International River Health Conference, which invites about 500 children from all over Australia and the world. And it takes place on the banks of the Murray River, which is where our story begins tonight.
Tiny little birds, aren't they? Beautiful little birds.
Lovely pelican coming towards us in the air there.
I grew up on the banks of the Murray River. The Billabong actually leads into the Murray River, and growing up here basically set the scene for my life, because you can't grow up here and not be an environmentalist, I don't think.
The old trees come down.
Amazing is how they seed and grow
Resilient.
in the base of an old tree. The tree's probably hundreds of years old, and we've got this younger one trying to grow up through there.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I could stand, knee deep in water and see my feet. The Billabong in particular used to be really clear, and now it's basically dirty. There was such a marked change, even in my short term, due to pollution and runoff and turbidity and those sorts of things. And that really saddened me and led me to where I am today.
And I'm stuck on the stump.
Even when the family does happen for me, I want to be able to hand to my kids something that I'm proud of. And I'd hate to have to hand all the issues that we're dealing with today to my kids and say, sorry guys, we messed up. It's now on your shoulders to deal with. It'd be a terrible feeling for me, I think, and I think it's an un-Australian feeling.
Guess what, guys? Did you hear today that the water in Wentworth, you can't drink it anymore? Anyone hear that?
No.
It's not good, is it? Do you think we should tell them the secret to saving our environment?
Do you think they're ready for it? Very, very strong secret. This we haven't shared it with anyone.
I think they're a pretty good group, so I think they are ready for it.
When I see Aaron in operation, as a parent, you're obviously going to feel very proud of what's happening.
It's such a special secret that it can save the whole world.
Okay, stand up. One of our neighbours said to me, isn't it lovely to have such an influence on your kids? And I never really thought about it in that way.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you each a role to play. A couple of roles here, different sorts of people. So I'm going to make you an irrigator, I'm going to make you an environmentalist, and you're the Premier of South Australia.
When we are doing a project, we're single-minded about it, so we are totally and utterly engrossed in that project. It's only at the end that you can actually get very emotional about what's been achieved. How did you score all the points?
Oh, we just talk to each other.
So they talk to each other. Maybe this is the part of the secret we're talking about. Rather than competition with each other all the time, there was a lot of
Cooperation. And that's the most important part of the environment. We can't keep blaming each other and pointing the finger and saying, I'm going this way and you're going that way. We need to talk to each other and come together and cooperate.
What you see now with Aaron is an absolute dynamo. Exciting, organised, enthusiastic, motivated, which is surprising to us because in school those qualities weren't there. This was a child that we had real worries about.
So you know the biggest secret in the world. So go out and save the environment.
Yes!
I did some bad things in primary school, and I was basically a real little bugger of a kid. It was just me trying to find where I fitted in and how I related to other people. That's probably the nice way to put it. The blunt way to put it was that I got up to a heap of mischief, and I probably made some teachers tear their hair out and wonder why they'd chosen teaching.
Richard was the arts advisor for the Mildura district, and Aaron was banned from art, and that message went round the community like wildfire. He'd painted some child's face, so the arts advisor's son had been banned from art. He was 5 years old at the time. The school found it difficult to cater for him, and actually a friend of ours who's a principal actually did say to us, this school can't cater for little boys like that.
I think it's guaranteed that I would have got expelled somewhere along the line if I hadn't sort of left that group of friends behind.
My career was going quite well. I loved my job as an arts consultant and curriculum advisor. But I was concerned about Aaron. He was the most important thing in my life at that stage. So I decided to apply for a job as a head teacher principal at a small school. And in that way, I could control the sorts of education that he was getting and keep an eye on him, which was probably what he needed at that stage. Maisie leapt down from the bale of wool on the paddle steamer's deck. The crack, crack of the stock whip could be heard over the noise of the cattle and the soft throb of the paddle steamer's idling engine. Maisie looked over the rail into the swirling water.
Richard had made up his mind when he started at the school that he was going to have a school that had an environmental bent and that he would be able to tie all the different aspects of education together, maths and science and so on, with the backing of environmental research and study.
Well, this is about a story about people just like you who took some action. And it's to do with your town, which is nice, the Murray River story, which is pretty important to all of us. Many people thought that the school was going down a reasonably radical path, but it wasn't. It was just probably good teaching that was starting to unfold. The sorts of things that I wanted to do was to try and change the power base within a school, which was the thinking that if a school's good for kids, it'll be good for teachers as well. So that we looked at a lot of child-centred programs.
I think things actually got worse because I decided, well, my dad was principal, so I could pretty much do what I wanted. I think one of the most embarrassing things for my father as principal was that I was supposed to be this role model, you know, the principal's son, and there was 2 occasions when basically parents had come to the school and said, look, there's a student standing over younger students and telling them that they should give their cream puffs to him. And my reaction at that stage was, well, we'll make sure we put a stop to this. Just give me their names and we'll make sure we stop it, modify it. And my father's right. There is no student in my school where that'll happen. Now, what is this student's name? It's actually your son.
We knew underneath that there was something that was going to come about for him. We could just tell. And there was also great support from a number of teachers that really saw in Aaron that there was this potential for someone that could do some good, and they nurtured that in him.
In the end, I did really well in Year 12, and I chose environmental science, and I was off to Melbourne University the next year.
We thought this was going to be absolutely perfect. He always loved the environment, he loved animals, he always wanted to be a zoologist from a very young age. It was actually when he started the forest science program at Melbourne University that his conservation views started to really gel.
Everything I do I can trace back to the river simply because it was such a large part of my life in growing up. I use the river sort of as a symbol, so when I say I want to save my river, that really is a symbol for I want to save every aspect of the environment, and that's probably a big thing, and people may say, well, how about you start with something a little small, but I'm a pretty ambitious person. What's caused these trees to die is essentially overuse of a resource, and that's the short answer of it. If you take the flow away and you change something so markedly from what it used to be, of course there's going to be consequences. We've seen such marked change in such a short time and such degradation in such a short time. If we don't do something, you know, for want of a better term, we're buggered.
And I think what we'll do is we'll get someone on spray and someone with a rag and we'll clean them all up.
The first environmental project that I did was the Lock Island Trail. And it's a little island which is literally 2 minutes from the main centre of Mildura. And I worked with local kids, Mildura West Primary School, in developing a series of signs about why flooding is important to us and what it means.
Clean these signs.
It really taught me a lot because I not only had to source the funding, I had to actually draft up the signs with the students, go out there and then physically put the signs in and actually develop the path. So I went right from getting the dollars in my hand to actually dropping the shovel in the ground to get the signs put up.
And rub it in.
I think the Lock Island project really gave me that inkling that there was something bigger out there than just the everyday sorts of issues that we were undertaking.
These steps go to the height of the 1956 flood level.
I started to wonder how I could bring all this together, all the knowledge that I'd learned and all the skills that I had, how I could bring this together into a career that let me stay in Mildura and let me actually realise my dream, and that was to help the environment.
So a friend of mine and I decided to start our own environmental company. And the ironic thing is I've hired my dad as our education consultant. So it's really turned the tables. From him sending me to stand in the corner as my school principal to him working for me now.
That's all done. Dad was saying we might have a bit more work on the go.
Yes. Well, what we've got is Wentworth Shire Council. We've got a youth development strategy there.
That's this one here,
yes.
Yes, it's a real turnaround, isn't it? It's a lovely feeling to be doing what parents do naturally, which is support their kids. But this way, I get to support my son, and he pays me for it.
Yeah, cancel that holiday. No holidays for you. Maybe in the year 2010 might be the next holiday for us, but...
Could you push me in the wheelchair? Or every so often, I take off my employee hat and put on my dad's hat, though, because if you work in the environment, it's a recipe to be up and down a roller coaster ride. And so I put the father hat on and say, we were talking about the ozone depletion levels back 35 years ago. It takes time. You need to just keep moving through that. So the father hat goes on just to make sure the buoyancy stays there.
Talking about my parents is a very easy thing because they've inspired me right through everything I do. You know, as a young school kid, you hope, gee, I really would like to go to the snow or something like that. My dad took kids up the river to Albury to campaign against effluent going into the river.
Nothing like a wood barbecue, I think.
This is making me hungry. Do you think we can hurry along?
And what my mum did was add the social side of things because being a social worker, she brought the social aspects to the environmental argument, which has been a major influence on the way I view and perceive things now.
There you go. You look like you need it.
Thank you very much.
Rivers are the lifeblood of communities across Australia and indeed the world.
From the Lock Island project, we got this first hint that kids taking responsibility for their own learning was a pretty powerful thing. So from that, I sat down with a group of local teachers and we started to formulate this idea that perhaps we needed to take it into a much bigger scale.
The 1999 Young People's River Health Conference was selected by the federal government as the most ambitious event to launch National Water Week Australia-wide.
We had the first Young People's River Health Conference in 1999. It ran again in 2001 and became international. It just kept growing and the interest was absolutely massive.
My first contact with Aaron, it was clear that he was a man of passion. He also believed in what he was doing and wasn't afraid to sort of open doors, and if a door was closed, he'd politely inquire why and where could he go. He's actually, I hate to say it, you could say he's a bit like a Labrador pup at occasions, he sort of has grown and matured, but, the innate sort of ability to do things has certainly worked. And he's that sort of sheer enjoyment of what he's doing.
At the end of that reflective session, they'll need to go straight out and hop on the buses. Yeah, I'm right for 12 o'clock.
Yeah, any time that's good for you, Dale.
All right, cool.
Every time I run this event, I worry that it might not come off.
Can you believe that? The only one I want and it's not in here.
I have panic attacks, literally have panic attacks where I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think, I haven't done this or I haven't done that, or perhaps I could have done this in a better way.
Doing a fantastic job too.
So, Aaron, what's your day job?
This is my day job, actually. Yeah, organising conferences and environmental events for young people. So
and then it all comes together and it runs pretty smoothly.
It's my great pleasure now to introduce one of the instigators of this whole conference, the idea that pushed it along. His name's Aaron Wood, a very special person in many people's lives.
I want to welcome you all here to Mildura, to my town.
It's certainly a frantic time for me, and I think after the 1999 and the 2001 events, I had teachers saying, so when's the next one? I said it will never be run again because I was literally stuffed after 3 days of running around.
We've had some schools raise in order of $5,000 just to get to this event, so give yourselves a hand for that. That's fantastic. 1, 2, 3.
Be free, little yabbies! Oh, look, there they go.
There they go, and they need a healthy river. So let me tell you, they need a river that's got a lot of water in it too.
So we're just putting all the scales on the fish to make it look really good.
The River Health Conference is based on the concept of kids teaching kids, which means that we allow those children to really research an environmental issue, ask their own questions, and then presenting back to another group of students. And something magical happens when that occurs.
We run on a huge river called the Yass River. There's crack willow all through it, and there's carp eating all our other fish.
Through the past months, I've noticed that the river's dropping, and if it keeps doing this, we might not have any fish to catch. No yabbies, no shrimps, no crayfish, no water.
And that's actually come from my dad's input and the sorts of things that he observed as a teacher and as a principal.
What we want out of this conference, and I hope you make a promise to me about it, is that in 2050 you'll be able to ring Aaron and tell him, I've just been elected Prime Minister of Australia and I'm going to put through some of the things that these people have been talking about. It'll be a wonderful outcome.
The father and son thing between Aaron and Richard, and it's also Aaron's mum too. It's actually transfer of wisdom, and that's what Aaron's picking up from both his parents, and you can actually see it. You can see the discipline of Richard and the organisation of Richard and the passion for social justice of his mother, and you've actually got a really nice handover of wisdom, and yeah, that's actually nice to see.
I just love working with my dad. It's something pretty great to be able to run an event and then turn to your employee, who's your dad, and say, yeah, we pulled it off again.
It takes a long time to get things changed. And then my son came along and he's talking about environmental change as well. Aaron, do you want to come out for a second? He's talking about environmental change with a conference like this. I think it's pretty important that he picks the next Aaron Wood from this conference to hand it down to next, because it's got to keep going. It has to keep going, and that's really important.
The funny thing is it's turned full circle in that my dad's now my role model. Looking back now as an adult myself and looking back at what my dad had to deal with, I feel terrible in putting him through it.
So the conference in 4 years' time, in 6 years' time, in 10 years' time might be managed by one of you guys, and you might go back to your schools and manage your own mini conferences, and that's the thing that will bring about change.
Daddy, come and tell me about your card.
I talk about my dad and I get really emotional about it. He's everything I want to be, and I've always said, if I can do half of what he's done, then I'll be happy. If I can, live half the good life that he's done and leave the legacy that he's done in terms of the impact he's had on kids' lives and parents' lives that have been at his school, he's got absolute respect from the people he deals with, and that's pretty important to me.
Aaron has taught me that with unbounded enthusiasm, you can just about achieve anything. Now, I might not have that same amount of energy, but being around him inspires me to keep going.
It's World Environment Day today, and the United Nations actually has an Australia-wide really prestigious award, which is in various categories. I've been nominated tonight for the International River Health Conference.
The finalists in the award for Outstanding Service to the Environment are...
How do I think I'll go tonight? Interesting question. I think it's great just to have made the finals.
Aaron aims to facilitate a cultural change in the way we use and view our natural environment.
And I think it's great just to be considered against the competition I'm against tonight, and I'm just happy to be here basically, and I'm going to enjoy myself tonight.
And the winner is Elizabeth O'Brien.
All right, I didn't win. It's human nature to be disappointed when you put up for an award and you don't win. It's only human nature to feel a little bit down. I feel like it's hard to be up against some of the bigger organisations.
I guess when things don't go your way, when it sort of seems to be one thing after the next, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've thought about chucking it all in and going and working 9 to 5 for someone else, doing away with the headaches and earning some money. It's probably, a hard one to talk about because you don't really want to admit to people that perhaps you're not coping with certain things, and there were times when I wasn't sleeping for weeks on end, and that's when Mum and Dad said that perhaps maybe I I need to think about doing something else if it's impacting on me physically. And I've thought about it. I've thought about going and working for a big corporation and I guess not selling out, but saying, well, you know, it's time to actually do something just for me. I decided to get back to what I was doing because I honestly don't think I could do anything else. I guess that's just something I have to live with. I want to be this person who makes a difference, and with wanting to do that comes certain pitfalls of uncertainty. We've now established an office in Melbourne, and I'm now responsible for that office, so it's pretty ironic in that respect that we started the business to remain in Mildura, and here I am in Melbourne.
1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1.
And I'm floor manager, okay? So when I say cut, you're cutting, all right?
So this sort of stuff I've actually got to wind up this time?
It means wind up.
Okay. I have an environmental segment on Pluck TV, which is a Channel 31 program, and that just allows me to try and get my message out to the wider community.
Anyway, it is time for Mr. Environment, once again on Thursday Pluck. Aaron Wood, how are you?
I'm good, Adam, and yourself?
I'm very well. It's a pleasure to have you back on the beanbags.
Well, thank you.
Now, every week we talk about problems with the environment, and what we're going to talk about today is what we do to fix them.
I think that the environment needs to be a standardised unit in every school in Australia, just as numeracy and literacy is. And one of the things I advocate is an environmental levy, a new tax in essence.
What it does is essentially it makes people say, well, where is my $5 going and what's it doing? And essentially what they want to do then is to reduce their impact on the environment so they don't have to pay this tax anymore. So I think what we do every day is by its very nature political, and so it is impossible not to consider politics when you're in the environmental game, and I've given it serious consideration.
Barry, g'day.
Good to see you again. Come on.
Let's go and have a look.
Sounds good to me.
My name's Barry Bishop. I'm a member of the Victorian State Parliament. We approached Aaron from the National Party's point of view to run for us and run for Parliament.
So I'll push enough bills through so we can all sit a couple of weeks.
I suppose as practising parliamentarians, we're always looking around in our community for people who are leaders.
So all the portraits.
Yeah, it's a good spot, I reckon.
And it was very obvious early on that Aaron Wood was a leader. Aaron Wood is a very fortunate young man. He's tall and he's blonde and he looks good and he plays football, he does everything quite well. And his ability to communicate with people is quite remarkable. He can talk to people at any level.
I reckon that's a really interesting one of Geoffrey Kennett.
He's looking very thoughtful.
Isn't it aggressive? You know,
yeah. Almost a footy shot, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. But I think it sort of stands out all the same. Typifies Geoffrey.
I've already had two approaches politically, one from the Democrats and one from the Nationals.
Whereabouts do you sit, Barry? Right there,
Just
Aaron.
here?
Why don't you slide along and we'll take a seat.
And you might say, well, Democrats versus Nationals, pretty different sorts of parties, but it was the people that made me consider it more than anything. I think a move towards politics is certainly in a 10-year time frame for me. Not a bad place to come to work, I think.
It is indeed. We spent some long hours in here, but we've had some changes.
Ever caught anyone napping?
I think he'd be eminently suited for federal politics, and I certainly hope that when he makes that decision, he makes the decision to run for the National Party.
Look, I'll have to be honest with you, and that my politics are left, but at the same time, I've met lots of good people in lots of good parties, and I'd have to say I'd love to go as an independent, because towing the political party line for me is probably not the way I operate when you consider I've started my own business to get away from that sort of thing. Every chance I get, I come back to Mildura. The river gives me a sense of calm. It gives me, I think, the ability to draw on its strength to keep on going.
saving our rivers has taken precedence in my life. You know, it sounds a bit corny, but a calling, as far as this is what I want to do, this is where I am, and it makes me happy. And I hope that at the end of the day, people can see that I'm doing something good for everyone else.
Yes, I am amazed and proud to see what's happened to him. In 2001, Aaron was named the Young Australian of the Year in the environmental category. So, yes, in our family, or particularly me, we call him the David Suzuki of our family.
Sometimes at the conference I get treated like a rock star. I get kids running around asking me to sign T-shirts and to sign their packs and that sort of stuff.
And I know our kids from our school got a lot out of it.
Thanks so much.
So good on you, mate.
Cheers.
The best thing about my job is that I can come home and say I changed someone's point of view, or I instilled in someone something so important that it really was life-changing. I guess it's sort of a legacy. Some people build buildings, some people build businesses, that sort of stuff. I want to save the environment, and if I can do that, that's something pretty special to leave behind, I think.
That's what I like to see.